Today I'm going to talk about loving yourself, being in a loving relationship with yourself, and and the difference between isolating yourself and being in solitude. So join me for this upcoming video. Hello, I'm Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and welcome back to this series of spiritual dilemmas. And right now we're talking about spirituality and relationships. And today specifically, I'm talking about being in relationship with yourself and how to do that, again, in terms of navigating other relationships, but navigating that place of solitude and tranquility versus isolation. If you like this video and like this series of videos, I'd love you to subscribe and also like this video with thumbs up because that lets me know that what I'm saying makes a difference in your life. So I would love to hear from you in that way. And then please feel free to leave a comment about your situations, your challenges, perhaps with the difference between solitude and isolation, and even finding that place of solitude for yourself. So I grew up in a family, a very big Catholic family. There were 9 kids, and there were 2 parents, and sometimes grandparents and aunts and uncles that were living at the house with us. So a lot of people, and never, I would say, never or rarely in the 18 years of growing up was I ever alone. And then when I got married, I basically got married right out of college, but that was also with people. And when I got married, quite often I was alone, and I felt isolated, and it was very difficult. In most of my relationship with my husband, I felt isolated, and hence we got to a point where it was time to divorce. At that time of divorce, then I did go into this state of isolation. In a sense, I was living alone for the first time in my life, and this is when I was close to 30. So the first time in my life I'm living alone, and I'm feeling terrified of how to be with myself. I had relied on the relationships of everyone else to keep me, in a sense, a state of security and safety, and now I had to learn to rely on myself for myself, and it took me about 30 years to do that. It took me a long time to find that sense of friendship with myself and compatibility with myself. I was always relying on other people to do that for me. I thought that I needed other people in my life to prove that I was worthy. I needed other people in my life to give me a sense of identity. I was somebody's wife, somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister. Those elements that gave me a sense of identity, gave me a sense of worth, that gave me a sense of possibly knowing who I am. And at the same time, they kept me, because I was so dependent on those categories and those identities, that I had no sense of who I was. And so I was terrified of being alone because I didn't know who I was. So little by little, and that's what I was training in. Initially, I was training to be a therapist. So little by little, I was getting therapy, training to be a therapist, training to be comfortable in my own skin, training to know who I was. At the same time, I was fighting constantly to not be isolated, because that's how I saw it. If I'm alone, that means I'm not with other people. That means my worth is, 0. If I'm alone, that means I'm unworthy. And this is a challenge, I think, for most of us, so many of us, because we're taught to be dependent on our relationships with our family or friends or partners, children. But when we come down to it, eventually, we find that it's really essential to know ourselves and to love ourselves, to appreciate and respect ourselves, so that we can then begin to have an authentic relationship with people around us. So most of my life, I was not in an authentic relationship because I was acting from my identifiers. This is what a wife does. This is what a mother does. This is what a friend does. And I couldn't know who I was inside that because I was so attached to these identifiers. As I was growing myself spiritually, though, as I was growing my relationship with my spirit self, and since I keep doing this, but it's really this. But so as I grow myself, I was learning to and training myself to see what I was holding on to see those attachments. And my attachment as mother, in a sense, has been with me for a very, very long time. And has caused me a lot of suffering because sometimes, and for most of us, our children don't show up that reflect the kind of mothering we think we're giving. And so we get upset and we get disappointed and we feel frustrated and we get angry. And those kids, they don't understand. But it's my identity that's being challenged. And as I move more towards the spiritual sense of myself as the divine and an aspect of the divine, then I can be in my being and be less identified as the mother. And so I can be with my daughter and my children, my grandchildren. I can be from a place of who I am, not as I'm supposed to be as the identity as a mother or grandmother. I can be with my friends, not as somebody I'm supposed to be, but who I authentically am. So over time, I've been able to shift from this fear-based place of being isolated, isolated not only from people that I love or partnerships, but isolated from my sense of identity, and begin to know who I am beyond those identities. So, for instance, Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage, and men and women merely players. We know our parts, we play our parts. But who are we off stage? When we're not on stage, when we're not playing our roles, who are we? And that scares a lot of people to think, who am I without those identifiers? And that has been a really beautiful growing edge for me to go, I want to know who I am when I'm not on stage. I want to know who I am beyond my identities, the ones that I've taken on. Part of my work as a transformational life coach, I want to be famous, or I want to be rich, or I want to be known, or I want to be successful. But those are all elements of an identity. It's not me. And so when I can separate from that, I become more clear about what brings me joy, what's infinitely pleasing, what delights me, and I can be more of that in the world. Not as an identity, but just because this is who I am in my essential nature. And this is what I want for you, is to have enough time with yourself. Give yourself enough time with yourself to get to know who you are. Quite often, we can say to our partners, hey, who do you see me as? Or what do you see me as? And that's still through the filters of their eyes. And when you can give yourself time, some solitude, to ask yourself those questions, like how am I in the world that I like? How am I in the world that I don't like? And what am I attached to? Quite often you'll hear me say that 80% of our thoughts are negative in nature. It's like, do I really want 80% of my life to be negative? Is that really what I want? I need to look at that. And generally we need to look at that in ourselves by ourselves. And that's a really, really important question to keep asking ourselves is, who am I in here? Not who I want to be, but that's part of it, but who am I here? And then we can be more at choice about, where do I want to take this for myself? Now, the last thing I'll say about this is, quite often we are confined by the space that we live in, perhaps with other people, and so that we don't have perhaps the space or the time. Many people who are parents say, I can't take time away from my kids to have that solitude, that time of solitude. I can't take that time away from my work, or my partners, or my friendships, or my animals. And this is a challenge. It's a dilemma. And so we can find ourselves and explore ourselves and ask ourselves those questions, and be with ourselves, even if we're just driving the car, if it's possible to find that space within ourselves, within the space of being with other people. So it's a challenge, and yet we can all find that space little by little. It doesn't take a lot, but to go, oh, I'm in the identity of even to identify where you are is the beginning. So if I'm with my kids and we're driving in the car and I go, oh, I'm in the identity as a mom right now, or I'm in the identity as a coach right now, I can begin to see myself separate from. So that's part of finding even the solitude with self when you're around other people. So just I want for you to have that relationship with yourself, to enjoy your own company in solitude, um, at, as you can. It's taken me decades to do that, and if it takes you decades, that's what it takes. Little by little, get to know who you are in here, and that is the relationship that you're building with your spirit self and your human self. All right, again, if you would be willing to subscribe and like this video so that I know what's of value to you, and please feel free to leave a comment of what inspired you, or helped you, or maybe triggered you, maybe something that didn't work for you. I'd love to hear that too. All right, blessings to you. Bye for now.